The conference room air hung heavy with the sterile scent of polished oak and recycled coffee, pressing against my skin like an accusation. Ms. Elena Vasquez's name echoed from the director's mouth. My promotion, the one I'd bled for over 3 years, handed to her instead. My rival's smile gleamed sharp across the table, while my years of late nights dissolved into nothing, my professional spine cracking under the weight. From the head of the room, the CEO's gaze pinned me, unreadable and intense. A silence that thrummed between us like a live wire. Then her assistant's whisper pulled me aside. "She wants to see you. Now." The elevator hummed downward to the executive floor, my heart a sharp, unrelenting ache. I'd always navigated the marketing firm's labyrinthine halls like a shadow, blending into the fluorescent hum of endless campaigns for luxury brands that promised escape but delivered only deadlines. Mornings started with black coffee scalding my tongue, spreadsheets blurring as I pitched ideas that felt like fragments of my own ambition, sleek ads for perfumes that evoked forbidden desires, strategies to capture hearts in 30-second bursts. Recognition lingered just out of reach, an unspoken ache that fueled my 12-hour days, my weekends sacrificed to revisions that rarely bore my name. I craved the validation, the corner office that symbolized not just status, but the quiet affirmation that my voice mattered in this machine of polished ambition. Elena Vasquez embodied everything I wasn't. Charismatic, with a laugh that disarmed boardrooms, and a ruthlessness that sliced through collaborations like a concealed blade. We'd shared projects before. The luxury watch launch where her suggestions rewrote my taglines overnight, crediting her flair while mine faded into footnotes. The skincare campaign where data mysteriously vanished from our shared drive, forcing me to rebuild from scraps while she presented flawless decks. Her sabotage was never overt, just enough to erode my footing. Her compliments laced with a patronizing edge that left me questioning my edge. In team meetings, she'd lean in with that knowing tilt of her head, her dark waves framing eyes that appraised like a predator sizing up prey. I told myself it was competition, not malice, but the whispers in the break room painted her as the firm's golden child, untouchable. The fallout hit like a slow fracture. The team email arrived mid-afternoon. Subject line crisp. Promotion announcement. Elena's face beamed from the attached photo, her bio extolling innovative leadership, while my contributions, those grueling nights aligning brand visions with market data, went unmentioned. Humiliation bloomed hot in my chest, spreading as colleagues offered tight smiles and murmurs of, "You'll get the next one." The whispers followed me to the copier, echoing like judgments in the hum of the machine. She deserved it more. Always one step ahead. My desk felt smaller. The stacks of reports a mocking testament to effort erased. Professional identity, the armor I'd forged through every overlooked pitch, began to splinter, leaving me exposed in the vast, open-plan floor where success was currency, and failure, invisibility. That's when the summons came, pulling me from the haze. The executive floor was a world apart, marble veined like secrets, walls of glass overlooking the city sprawl. Her office door swung open to reveal Victoria Lang, the CEO, rising from her desk with a composure that bordered on formidable. Mid-40s, perhaps, with silver threading her auburn hair pulled into a severe knot, she moved with the precision of someone who owned not just the company, but the air around her. Her suit, charcoal gray tailored to her frame, accentuated the quiet authority in her posture. Her eyes, a piercing hazel, met mine without warmth or pity, just an intensity that made the room contract. "Sit," she said, her voice a low contralto that resonated too richly for the sterile space, commanding without elevation. I obeyed, the leather chair cool against my back, my pulse a traitor in the silence. She didn't waste words on the promotion, as if my humiliation was a given. Instead, she slid a slim folder across the desk, her fingers long and steady, nails unpainted, a detail that unsettled me amid her immaculate presence. "This is a shadow project," she explained, leaning forward slightly, the faint scent of sandalwood brushing the air between us. "High stakes, off books. A rebrand for our biggest client, but with risks they can't know. I need someone sharp, discreet. Late nights, exclusive collaboration, just you and me." The offer hung there, laced with implication. Proximity to power, a chance to reclaim what Elena stole, but tethered to her orbit. My mind reeled, the magnetism of her gaze pulling against the fear of imbalance, her authority a cage I couldn't name. Vulnerability clawed up, exposed in the way my hands trembled on the folder's edge, the unspoken longing for recognition twisting into something deeper, more perilous. What was this deal, really? A lifeline or a trap? Sealed in the charged quiet of her domain. Nights blur into the dim glow of her office. The space between desks a charged sanctuary. The first late session arrived like a summons I couldn't ignore, the elevator depositing me at her floor with nerves coiling tight in my gut. I arrived precisely at 8, the building's hum fading to a distant murmur, leaving only the soft click of my heels on marble. Her office door stood ajar, spilling warm lamplight into the corridor, and I paused there, inhaling the faint trace of sandalwood that seemed woven into the air. Pushing inside, I found the space immaculate, yet unexpectedly intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's glittering veins, her desk a vast expanse of ebony polished to a mirror sheen, and 2 armchairs angled close, as if conspirators in conference. Victoria was already there, sleeves rolled to her elbows, revealing forearms corded with quiet strength. She glanced up from a stack of confidential briefs, her hazel eyes catching the light like fractured amber. "Sit," she said again, that low contralto wrapping around the word, rich and unhurried, pulling me forward despite the tremor in my limbs. I settled into the armchair opposite, the leather sighing under me, and spread the folder she'd given me earlier across the low table between us. The project was a rebrand for our flagship client, a luxury conglomerate teetering on scandal, whispers of ethical lapses that could tank stock prices if leaked. We needed a narrative that rebuilt trust without exposing fractures. All off books to evade the board's scrutiny. Her guidance came sharp at first, dissecting my initial sketches with a pen that slashed red lines like precise incisions. "Here," she murmured, leaning across to point, her breath a warm current against my wrist. "The tagline needs edge, something that evokes sanctuary, not sterility. You've got the instinct for it." The compliment landed with a sultry undertone, her voice dipping lower on the praise, as if savoring my potential, and heat bloomed unbidden in my chest, warring with the professional mask I clung to. As hours stretched, the proximity turned accidental, yet inevitable. We pored over documents side by side. Her chair scooted close enough that our knees brushed under the table, a fleeting contact that sent a jolt through me, sharp and electric, lingering in my skin like an afterimage. Once, reaching for the same market analysis printout, our hands collided over the crisp pages. Her fingers, cool and steady, grazed mine, and time stuttered. I pulled back too quickly, murmuring an apology, but she only smiled faintly, a curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes, holding the document between us like a shared secret. The ache of attraction built in those silences. A slow unraveling of boundaries I'd sworn to maintain, her presence a tangible magnetism, drawing me toward the peril of what this collaboration demanded. Late nights meant isolation, her authority the only anchor in the dim glow. And I ruminated endlessly on the pull, the fear of overstepping, the unspoken longing that twisted every professional exchange into something charged, forbidden. Then came the interference, a shadow slinking into our secrecy. Midweek, during a rare break to stretch, I slipped down to the executive lounge for coffee, only to overhear Elena's voice filtering from a nearby alcove. Her tone honeyed, laced with insinuation as she chatted with a junior exec. Heard there's some off-books magic happening upstairs. Wonder who the director's pet project is this time. Laughter followed, sharp and knowing, and my stomach nodded at the implication. She'd sniffed out the deal, perhaps through a pilfered email or whispered rumor. Her sabotage now aimed at unraveling what little ground I'd reclaimed. The stakes heightened, secrecy a fragile veil against her ruthlessness. And I returned to Victoria's office with the encounter burning unspoken, my focus fracturing under the weight. Yet, in the quiet hours that followed, I glimpsed her rare vulnerability, a fatigue etching faint lines around her eyes as she rubbed her temple, the immaculate composure cracking just enough to reveal the woman beneath the title. "Long day," she admitted softly, her gaze drifting to the window where city lights blurred into streaks. The admission drew me closer, an invisible thread tightening between us, her weariness mirroring my own hidden fractures, and making the space feel less like a boardroom, more like a confessional. In that moment, the power dynamic shifted subtly, her intensity softening into something almost human, pulling me deeper into the orbit I both craved and feared. One evening, as rain lashes the windows, the conversation shifts from strategy to shadows. The rain came that evening like a veil, sheets of it slashing against the windows in relentless rhythm, turning the city below into a smeared watercolor of lights and shadows. We'd been deep into the rebrand's core narrative, mapping trust arcs on the whiteboard with markers that squeaked faintly against the gloss, when Victoria set hers down with a deliberate click. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing inside me, thunder rumbling low, as if echoing the weight I'd carried unspoken for weeks. I glanced at her, silhouetted against the glass, her profile sharp and unyielding. Yet something in the way she watched the downpour softened the edges. "This project," she said, her voice that low contralto threading through the patter of rain. "It's more than strategy. It's personal for you, isn't it?" The question hung there, gentle but probing, pulling at the threads I'd kept tightly wound. I hesitated, the folder in my lap suddenly heavy, its pages blurring as memory flooded in. My voice came halting, words tumbling like stones dislodged from a cliff. The promotion, it wasn't just a title, it was proof. Years of pouring myself into this firm, rewriting campaigns until my eyes burned, only to watch Elena take it. It felt like erasure, like everything I'd built was invisible. The confession cracked open something raw, vulnerability spilling into the space between us. My hands twisted the folder's edge, knuckles whitening, as the ache of that boardroom moment resurfaced. The sterile air closing in, my ambition fracturing like cheap glass. Tears pricked, unbidden, and I blinked them back, hating the exposure in her presence, this woman whose authority could crush or elevate with a word. She didn't interrupt, her hazel eyes holding mine with a steadiness that bordered on intimate, the rain's cadence the only sound for a long breath. Then she leaned back, fingers steepled, and her response came soft, that rich timbre wrapping around her own history like smoke. "I know displacement. Early in my career, I was passed over for a lead on a merger. Brilliant work, but the board saw a man instead. It displaced me, made me question if the cage of this world would ever bend." The admission created a fragile bridge, her words unveiling cracks in her formidable facade. Fatigue lingered in the faint lines at her eyes, a weariness that humanized her, drawing me across the divide. In that shared shadow, the power between us tilted, not shattered, but enough to let warmth seep through the chill of hierarchy. Her gaze held too long after that, intense and appraising, before she spoke again, voice dipping into something sultry, laced with admiration. Your resilience, though, it's indelible. The way you rebuild from those blows, sharper each time. It's what makes your ideas cut through the noise. The compliment settled over me like a caress, warmth spreading from my chest outward, coiling low despite the professional veil. She emphasized the point with a subtle lean, her hand grazing my shoulder in a fleeting touch, fingers light but deliberate, tracing the line of my blouse's seam before withdrawing. My breath hitched in the quiet room, the contact electric, a jolt that lingered on my skin, unraveling the careful distance I'd maintained. Fear and desire coiled tighter, like a cage unlocking inch by inch, the pull of her proximity both terrifying and inevitable. I processed it in fragments, the storm inside raging against the one outside, her touch a spark that threatened to ignite everything unspoken. From that tension, the breakthrough emerged unbidden. As we circled back to the whiteboard, my halting pitch for a sanctuary narrative, evoking hidden refuges amid corporate gloss, clicked with her revisions, binding our visions into something potent, unbreakable. The idea flowed between us, her nod affirming, our hands gesturing close without crossing, the project's pulse quickening in sync with my own. The breakthrough demands celebration, but the air thickens with what remains unsaid. The breakthrough lingered like a shared secret, its energy humming through the following days as we refined the rebrand's visuals in stolen hours that stretched longer each night. Extended sessions became our rhythm, the office emptying around us until the only sounds were the soft whir of the air system and the distant pulse of the city below. One evening, as the clock ticked past 10, Victoria rose from her desk with a fluid grace, her hazel eyes catching mine in silent invitation. "Coffee," she said, that low contralto wrapping the word in quiet command, and I followed her to the private lounge adjoining her office, a secluded nook with leather sofas and a sleek machine that hissed steam into the dim air. She poured 2 mugs, the rich aroma blooming between us, steam curling upward like breaths mingling in the chill space. Handing me mine, her fingers brushed the ceramic against my palm, a deliberate graze that sent warmth seeping deeper than the liquid itself. We settled on the sofa, knees angled close, the project's momentum giving way to a fragile ease, her presence filling the room with an undeniable pull that made every sip feel intimate, charged. Playful tension wove into our exchanges as the nights deepened, her formidable composure cracking with light teasing that unraveled my own guarded edges. "You always underline your notes twice," she observed one session, leaning over my shoulder to tap the page, her breath a warm current against my ear. Her smile curved slow, almost mischievous, as if savoring the quirk I had hidden behind efficiency. "It's endearing, shows how fiercely you commit." The words carried a sultry lilt, her voice dipping rich and unhurried, and I felt my cheeks heat, a laugh escaping, brittle but genuine, the sound bridging the space between us. She countered my revisions with her own gentle jabs, mimicking my furrowed brow during a heated debate over color palettes, her imitations so precise it drew me into shared amusement. In those moments, her laugh emerged low and throaty, a rare unraveling that made the lounge feel smaller, her intensity softening into something approachable, magnetic, pulling confessions from me about forgotten deadlines and the absurd rituals that kept me sane in the firm's grind. The touches escalated subtly, each one explicit in its intent, yet veiled in necessity, building the ache that coiled unrelenting in my chest. During an animated discussion on the client's trust metrics, I gestured wildly at the screen, nearly toppling my mug. Her hand shot out, steadying my arm with fingers firm and warm. lingering there as if to anchor not just the spill, but the tremor beneath my skin. The contact burned, her palm pressing through the thin fabric of my blouse, thumb tracing a faint circle that spoke of possession without words. I froze, breath catching sharp, the room narrowing to that point of heat where her touch met mine, her hazel eyes locking with an intensity that stripped away pretense. "Steady," she murmured, voice sultry and low, the compliment implicit in the way she held on a beat too long, as if mapping the pulse racing under my sleeve. The longing sharpened then, a profound ache blooming in my chest, her presence a tangible magnetism that drew me inexorably closer. Every glance, every shared breath amplified it, the forbidden proximity twisting professional duty into desire, leaving me ruminating in the quiet aftermath, fear and want coiling like shadows in the lounge's low light. Elena's escalation shattered the fragile bubble midweek, her jealousy manifesting in a hallway confrontation that fueled fresh doubts about the deal's fragility. I was en route to Victoria's floor, arms laden with revised decks, when she materialized from a side corridor, her dark waves loose and eyes narrowed like daggers. "Slipping into the executive shadows now?" she hissed, voice laced with venom, blocking my path with a step that forced me to halt. Her perfume, sharp and cloying, invaded the space, her words dripping accusation. "Whatever pet project you've wormed into, it won't last. I've seen directors like her chew through ambition like yours." The jab landed deep, stirring insecurities about the power imbalance, the deal's secrecy, now a vulnerability Elena could exploit. Jealousy twisted her features, her success with the promotion fueling a possessiveness that made my reclaimed ground feel illusory. Doubts swirling as I pushed past, her laughter trailing like a threat. That night pushed us to the edge. Victoria's invitation to stay late sealing the office in charged silence as the last stragglers departed. "We need to lock this down," she said, her tone firm yet intimate, gesturing to the whiteboard where our ideas bled into one another. The building emptied around us, floors falling quiet until only our voices echoed, the city's lights flickering below like distant stars. The air thickened with the unsaid, her proximity a constant hum, pulling me toward the precipice where boundaries blurred and the ache demanded release. As the city lights flicker below, a question hangs, pulling us toward the precipice. The precipice we teetered on gave way that Friday night, the city's lights below mocking our fragile secrecy with their indifferent gleam. We'd been finalizing the rebrand's pitch deck, Victoria's fingers flying across the keyboard in sharp, efficient strokes, when my phone buzzed insistently on the table, a notification that sliced through the charged quiet like a blade. I glanced at the screen, heart stuttering as an anonymous email loaded. Subject line stark. Shadow Games exposed. Attached were screenshots of our confidential briefs, the sanctuary narrative twisted into damning fragments, details that could unravel the client if they surfaced. Elena's handiwork was unmistakable. Her initials lingered in the metadata like a signature, a peak of sabotage that flooded me with panic, surges of nausea rising as the room spun. "This can't be," I whispered, voice fracturing, shoving the phone toward Victoria, my hands trembling with the terror of exposure. Not just the project, but us. The late nights that had blurred into something perilously personal. She scanned the screen, her hazel eyes narrowing to slits, composure fracturing into a storm of controlled fury. The low contralto that usually soothed now sharpened, firm and unyielding as she seized her own device. "Stay here," she commanded, already dialing her IT lead, the intimacy of our sessions eclipsed by the defense she mounted without hesitation. I paced the office's perimeter, the marble cool underfoot, panic coiling tighter as fragments of the email replayed. Implications of favoritism, whispers of impropriety that painted our collaboration as illicit. Victoria's voice cut through the call, intimate in its protectiveness, yet laced with authority that brooked no argument. Trace it immediately. Contain this before it breeds. She shielded me effortlessly, her words a barrier against the fallout, positioning herself between me and the threat, as if my vulnerability was hers to guard. In that moment, her power wasn't a cage but a sanctuary, her defense wrapping around the ache I'd buried, pulling me from the edge even as fear clawed deeper. When she ended the call, the air between us thickened. Rain from earlier, now a distant patter against the windows, underscoring the raw silence. I sank into the armchair, the leather creaking under my weight, words tumbling out unbidden, raw and halting as vulnerability peaked. This is my fault. Pushing too hard, getting too close. But it's not just the project, it's you. The way you look at me, the touches that linger, it terrifies me. This pull, this attraction, it's everything I shouldn't want, not with you, not here. The admission hung heavy, my chest heaving with the terror of it, the power imbalance fracturing open. Tears welled, hot and unbidden, as I confessed the storm inside. The fear of losing myself in her orbit, the desire that had simmered into an undeniable ache, coiling through every late-night glance and accidental brush. Victoria crossed the space in 2 strides, her presence formidable yet softened, kneeling before me with a grace that stole my breath. Her eyes searched mine, hazel depths reflecting the city's fractured lights, and she revealed the mutual pull in a voice low and confessional. The dynamic between us fracturing softly, like ice under spring thaw. It's not one-sided. From that first boardroom glance, when your world cracked, I saw the fire in you, the resilience that mirrors my own hidden fractures. This magnetism, it's pulled at me too, testing every boundary I've built. The power I hold shouldn't touch this, but it does, undeniable and consuming. Her words bridged the chasm, vulnerability echoing mine, her admission a quiet unraveling that made the room contract to just us, the professional veil tearing as desire surfaced raw and reciprocal. The sultry moment unfolded then, her hand rising to cup my cheek, palm warm and steady against my flushed skin, thumb tracing the line of my jaw with deliberate slowness, eyes holding permission in their intense gaze, a question unspoken but electric. Heat bloomed under her touch, the ache sharpening to a profound, undeniable peace, fear yielding to the pull as I leaned into it, breath hitching sharp. Time suspended, the space between us charged with everything we'd denied, her closeness a tangible sanctuary that demanded surrender. Tension released in the explicit kiss that followed, lips meeting tentative at first, a brush of softness that tested the precipice, then deepening as restraint shattered, breaths ragged and mingling in the quiet room. Her mouth moved against mine with a hunger veiled in tenderness, the low contralto of her sigh vibrating through me, hands framing my face as the world narrowed to that point of connection. Desire uncoiling in waves that left us both trembling. The kiss lingers, but dawn brings the weight of consequences, reshaping everything. Dawn crept through the blinds like a hesitant intruder, gray light filtering into Victoria's office where we'd collapsed against the sofa, the kiss's echoes still thrumming in my veins. I woke to the faint imprint of her touch on my cheek, fingers ghosting where her thumb had traced, an indelible warmth that altered my internal landscape. The ache had shifted from torment to a profound, simmering peace, desire affirmed in the way my body remembered her closeness, breath sinking in the quiet aftermath. Her arm draped loosely over my waist, a possessive yet tender anchor, and I lay there, processing the precipice we'd crossed, professional boundaries fractured, yet the vulnerability we'd shared felt like reclamation, not ruin. The city stirred below, horns faint and distant, But inside, everything had reshaped. The fear of her power now intertwined with trust. The longing no longer a cage, but a key turning in my chest. By morning, the professional fallout cascaded swift and unyielding. Elena's sabotage unraveling under the scrutiny Victoria's IT team unleashed. Alerts pinged across my phone as I dressed in the dim light. Her blouse rumpled from the night, smoothing it with hands that still trembled faintly. The leaked details traced back to Elena's device. Her anonymous email a desperate bid, exposed in metadata trails that painted her as the firm's serpent. Board whispers turned to action. HR summoned her for a formal review. Her promotion suspended amid the chaos, reconsidered as favoritism claims boomeranged. Colleagues' sidelong glances followed me in the halls, a mix of pity for her and quiet awe for my survival. But the weight lifted incrementally. My desk, once a shrine to erasure, now held the Shadow Project's sealed folder, a testament to ground reclaimed. Victoria's assurance came via text as I descended to my floor. Contained, you're safe. The words landed like a sultry promise, her protectiveness weaving through the corporate storm, pulling me from displacement towards something solid, seen. Intimacy continued in stolen fragments. The office's shadows are reluctant allies as days blurred into cautious rhythm. We'd pass in corridors, her hand brushing my lower back in fleeting graze, fingers lingering just enough to send a jolt sharp and electric through my spine. In the elevator once, alone amid the hum, she leaned close, whispering a compliment, sultry and low. Your insight last night, the way it cuts through. It's intoxicating. Her breath warm against my ear, hazel eyes holding mine with that unreadable intensity, now laced with shared secrets. These moments piled like kindling, the ache reigniting in quiet corners. A shared glance over coffee in the lounge, her foot nudging mine under the table, deliberate and teasing. Late afternoons when she'd summon me under pretense of revisions, door clicking shut to seal us in charged proximity. Her voice dipping rich as she praised a tagline's nuance. Touch on my forearm, explicit in its warmth, thumb circling slow. Desire built unhurried, the power dynamic tilting toward equity in these whispers, her formidable presence softening into invitation, pulling confessions from me about the terror and thrill of us. She resolved the imbalance with ethical clarity that grounded the fire, ensuring safeguards in a quiet assurance that bound us tighter. Over lunch in her office, blinds drawn against prying eyes, she outlined boundaries, disclosure forms for HR on the collaboration's legitimacy, consent voiced explicit and mutual. This, between us, starts only if you choose. No repercussions, no strings to your career. Her low contralto wrapped the words in tenderness, hand covering mine on the table, palm steady and warm, eyes searching for affirmation. I nodded, voice husky with the weight of it. Yes, fully. The agreement a bridge from cage to sanctuary. Her vulnerability in offering choice, stripping the last veils of hierarchy. Power became shared terrain. Her authority no longer a threat, but a mirror reflecting my strength. Desire affirmed in the way she held my gaze. The space between us electric, yet safe. The emotional payoff crystallized then, confidence reclaiming me not through titles, but through her gaze's profound mirror. Being truly seen, fire and fractures alike, ignited a resilience that Elena's defeat only amplified. The rival's subplot closed with her resignation letter circulating by week's end, a clipped email admitting overreach, her charisma crumbling under investigation's glare. Yet ambiguity lingered in her parting glance across the floor, eyes narrowed with unresolved grudge, a shadow that hinted at future whispers but couldn't touch the sanctuary we'd forged. I stood taller in meetings, pitches flowing unhesitant, the ache transformed into quiet power. Her subtle nod from the head table, a sultry affirmation that everything, loss, pull, kiss, had led here, to being whole. With the project nearing end, one final late night tests the boundaries we've redrawn. The Shadow Project's success sealed our triumph in a boardroom bathed in morning light, the client's executives nodding through the pitch with a fervor that masked their relief. Victoria presented the rebrand with her characteristic poise, her low contralto weaving the sanctuary narrative into a tapestry of trust rebuilt, while I supported from her side, my insights landing sharp and unyielding. The deal closed that afternoon, contracts inked, stock whispers turning bullish, and in the quiet aftermath, HR's email arrived. My promotion reinstated, elevated even, to lead strategist. A role that eclipsed the original loss with responsibilities that felt like wings unfurling. Elena's shadow had faded entirely, her resignation a footnote in the firm's newsletter. But my elevation stemmed not from her fall, but from the fire Victoria had seen and stoked. Standing at my desk later, folders now bearing my name, I felt the fracture heal. Ambition no longer a solitary ache, but a shared flame. Our bond deepened in the subtle rhythms that followed, the office's rigid lines softening around us as we navigated the new equilibrium. Evenings ended with shared walks from the building, the city's dusk wrapping us in twilight hush, our steps sinking on sidewalks slick with evening dew. Hands brushed in public restraint, fingers grazing knuckles as we passed under street lamps, a fleeting contact that sent jolts sharp and electric up my arm, her hazel eyes flicking to mine with a promise veiled in propriety. Once, waiting for the crosswalk light, she stepped closer against the chill, her shoulder pressing mine, the warmth seeping through layers like an unspoken vow. We spoke of trivialities, the firm's latest merger, a client's eccentric demands. But the undercurrent thrummed, her proximity a constant hum that made the world feel intimate, conspiratorial. These moments bound us tighter, the power once a chasm, now a bridge we cross daily, her presence evolving from formidable to familiar, the longing simmering beneath every glance. Sultry affirmations wove through our days, her words a caress that ignited the ache anew. In a stolen elevator ride, doors sealing us alone, she turned with that slow smile, voice dipping rich and unhurried. Your fire today in the meeting, it consumes, draws everything into its orbit. The compliment settled low, warmth coiling as her hand found my waist, possessive yet tender, fingers splaying against the curve of my hip through silk, thumb tracing a lazy arc that spoke of nights beyond the office. Breath hitched, I leaned into the touch, the explicit press of her palm grounding me amid the descent's hum, her eyes holding mine with an intensity that stripped away the corporate veil. It was affirmation not just of skill, but of the woman she'd unveiled, desire affirmed in the way her grip tightened briefly, reluctant to release as floors chimed. Internally, I ruminated on the transformation, from the boardroom's displacement, where ambition cracked like fault lines, to this sanctuary found in her gaze's mirror. The ache that once caged me had unlocked. Vulnerability no longer a fracture, but the strength that let light seep through. Late nights alone now brought reflection, not isolation, as I traced the shift in journaled fragments. The terror of her authority yielding to trust, the pull evolving into peace, profound and undeniable. Her influence had reshaped me, not by elevation alone, but by seeing the hidden landscapes I'd mapped in silence, turning erasure into emergence. External challenges arose in whispers of office gossip, murmurs rippling through break rooms about the director's favorite, and late-night lights on the executive floor. We navigated them with a united front, Victoria addressing rumors in a firm, all-hands memo on transparency, her contralto steady as she affirmed Merritt's role, while I held my head higher in meetings, pitches unhesitant. Side glances faded under our composure. The bond, a quiet armor that turned scrutiny into irrelevance. The future she foreshadowed came in quiet promises, beyond work intimacy, beckoning like the city's horizon. "Weekends away," she murmured one walk, hand brushing mine again. "No desks, just us." The longing simmered, electric and enduring, pulling toward horizons unspoken. The final meeting concludes, but our story's true arc begins in the unspoken. Reflection came in the quiet hours after the final meeting. As I sat at my new desk, the promotion's weight settling like a mantle I'd earned through fire. I mapped the arc in fragments, tracing the shift from that boardroom ache, a raw, fracturing displacement where ambition felt like a solitary cage, to this undeniable peace, profound and woven into every breath. The longing that once coiled tight, a vulnerability I'd hidden behind spreadsheets and sharp pitches, had unraveled into strength. Victoria's gaze had been the catalyst, her intensity a mirror reflecting not just my skills, but the hidden landscapes of doubt and desire I'd navigated alone. No longer erased, I stood ignited. Confidence, not a fragile regain, but a flame kindled deep, burning steady against the firm's relentless hum. Her belief in me, voiced in sultry whispers during our late sessions, had transformed the power's cage into sanctuary, where vulnerability emerged as the true anchor, raw, unyielding, binding us in ways words could only hint at. That evening, in her space beyond the office walls, aloft high above the city, walls lined with abstract prints that evoked shadowed intimacies, we surrendered to the pull we'd danced around for weeks. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing the world out, and she turned, hazel eyes holding mine with that unreadable depth now softened by shared secrets. "You've been my revelation," she murmured, voice low contralto, rich and unhurried, stepping close enough that her scent of sandalwood enveloped me, a tangible magnetism drawing my hands to her waist. The touch was explicit, fingers splaying against the silk of her blouse, feeling the warmth of her beneath, possessive yet tender as she leaned in. Our lips met unhurried, a kiss that deepened slowly, her mouth moving against mine with deliberate hunger, breaths mingling ragged in the dim light. Tongues brushed tentative, then insistent, a sultry exploration that sent jolts, sharp and electric, through me, her hands framing my face, thumbs tracing jaw lines in circles that echoed our first confessions. Bodies pressed close, curves aligning in the quiet space, her thigh nudging mine as we sank onto the sofa, the contact igniting the ache anew, warmth coiling low, unspoken promises humming between us. No rush, just the slow burn yielding to connection. Her sigh vibrating against my lips, a compliment unspoken in the way she held me, as if savoring the fire she'd helped ignite. Confidence revealed itself fully in her gaze's profound mirror, that hazel intensity stripping away the last veils of self-doubt. As we parted from the kiss, foreheads resting together, breaths sinking in the afterglow, I saw it, myself, whole and fierce, the woman who'd cracked under erasure, now unbreakable, her eyes affirming the transformation. "Look at you," she whispered sultrily, hand trailing down my arm, fingers interlacing with mine in a grip warm and steady. "This strength, it's always been yours. I only held the light to it." The words settled like peace, vulnerability no longer a fracture, but the core of our bond. Power's dynamic evolved into mutual sanctuary where desire flowed freely, unburdened by hierarchy. Thematically, it closed the circle. The cage of corporate ambition, once a prison of unspoken longings, became our haven. Strength forged in the vulnerability we'd bared. Late nights of tension yielding to this, where every touch, every shared breath, affirmed the truth we'd uncovered. Subtle hints lingered in her casual plans. A weekend escape murmured over wine, nights ahead charged with possibility, her hands squeezing mine as if sealing futures unspoken. The deal's end had opened doors, tension evolving into something enduring. A slow burn that promised depths beyond the office's glare, pulling us toward horizons electric with what we'd built. Her hands slipped into mine as we stepped into the night, city lights blurring into streaks around us. The space between us thrummed, no longer empty but electric with unspoken truth. If this slow burn stirred your own hidden longings, subscribe for more tales of forbidden intimacies that reshape everything.